Aloha, namaste. This is Alexis with Radha Home Yoga, and I want to give you the forecast for this month to come. So right now it's September 8th. So it's more than just September. I'm going to kind of bleed into the beginning of October with this as well. There's a lot of huge transits that are happening right now, like big ones, that are going to change the entire trajectory of the next couple years. And so I want to break that down separate from the new moon report that I'll be doing for September 17th and separate from the full moon report I just did. So we had a big sort of start to this month, the month really being a moon cycle. So the new moon in Leo was our first like fiery foray into this new cycle that we're in. And the reason it was such a big deal, all new moons start something, they begin a new cycle. And that's really what a moon cycle is a new moon through a full moon until it ends in the next new moon. And that Gregorian calendar, doesn't actually match up with that. That's why this isn't a, September report or even a month report, because I've already done the past full moon, and I'll do a new moon in September 17th. But that Leo new moon really brought in the energy of change, courage, and transformation, because it wasn't just in Leo. It was the sun in its own sign of Leo. It was Mars at the exact same time moving right into Aries, into his own sign, his own fire sign of Aries. And then Jupiter still being in his own fire sign of Sagittarius. And even at that time, Saturn is in his own sign of Capricorn. There was quite a lot of, positive dignity, positive intelligence with all these energies for all of us to really harness and use. But the fieriness specifically gives us that courage, that external motivation, that ability to just go out in the world and take on what we need to do. So you might have used that cycle personally in your life to upheave and change something. Maybe your job, maybe where you live, maybe, made some big decision around a relationship. There's a lot of big change that happens when all that fire comes together. We get collectively courageous. So of course we saw in the world outside a lot of change, and personally, I live right now in California. It immediately exploded into fires. Like that new moon set off fires everywhere, all over the state. And I know they were happening in Colorado and Oregon and other places also. There was also hurricanes and things happening too. So there's, the angry storm energy as well. There was a lot going on just in terms of our, geological, natural events, let alone political, social, and all those other things. So the fiery quality, there was also, very big social things that happened, with anger and fire, bullets, guns, things like that as well. So personally, we have a lot of potential to make change in our own world during that kind of a shift. And that was a big one. As we moved into the month, we just had our full moon in Aquarius, in sidereal Aquarius, where we were able to sort of counter that energy. But as we are moving deeper into September, what we're finding is that we feel a little bit stuck. So maybe we had all this courage, maybe we had all this momentum, and maybe we really made some big decisions and choices, but now things are feeling really kind of like, did I make the right choice? Am I committed to the right things? Am I even believing the right things? There's a lot of switching over and changing and shifting of beliefs even that I've been witnessing. People starting to post things, in articles and things from the past or old things. There's just this sort of quality of uncertainty that's taking on. And the reason that's happening, well, it's manyfold, but the immediate reason that we can see is that we have Mars slowing to a halt. He's going to begin his retrograde motion tomorrow, September 9th. So he just stepped into his own fiery sign of Aries out of Pisces, and now he's slowing to a stop. And our sense of action, our sense of courage, our sense of discipline, even though he's still in Aries, it's a quality of feeling stuck. Literally, like, your feet can't move, you don't know what you're doing, kind of stuck, which is hard because chances are you made some really big choices in that early stage of the new moon in Leo, and now you're like, having to move forward still, but now it's like, my feet won't move. And Jupiter is halted as well because his forward motion, so Jupiter's been retrograde for many months, and his forward motion September 12th, so just 4 days from now. So our sense of clarity on what we believe, our sense of clarity on what inspires us, on what motivates us, and also, those kind of things, like what inspires you, what motivates you, what you believe, really informs your choices in this world. Big time, right? What dogma or, spiritual ideology you subscribe to. All of those different things dictate a lot of choices you make in terms of your job, in terms of your relationships, in terms of where you live. These are huge things. And I've seen these be big propellants for people who are moving right now, making their choices based on these ideologies. So, even though Jupiter was still retrograde a few weeks ago during that new moon, that burst of fire really made us make choices, even though probably in the back of our head it's been months thinking about this, months kind of like mulling over the different choices you have in your life, and that fire kind of starts you going. But now that it's stalling to a halt, it's different than that retrograde questioning motion. It's like stuck, like it's literally this feeling, just like with Mars, it's your feet stuck, you can't physically move. With Jupiter, it's like your wisdom is stuck, your beliefs are stuck. You're like, what do I believe again? What is the ideology I'm making all these big choices based on? Because when it's retrograde, you might be questioning, but you're also really diving and drilling deep into your own self with that energy. So you're not manifesting as much on the outward stage, but you're making things clear to yourself internally, right? But that can still help you make decisions, especially as we were sort of nearing the end of a long retrograde cycle, and he's in his own sign of Sagittarius. So there's a lot of intelligence there. But the stuck energy of stationary is really harder to move through because it's not moving. It's literally a feeling of not moving. From our perspective here on Earth, the planet is stopped. So we have this literal stuckedness. Like we're stuck in our beliefs, but the mobility we need is not there. And then of course, whatever these planets rule for you is huge. Mars and Jupiter, are going to rule 2 different houses for everybody, depending on your rising sign. And so they're also located in a different house for everybody. It's going to be one of those 2 houses because they're in their own signs right now. But that's going to make a big difference as to how it affects you in your life, where it affects you in your life, what is it changing for you. So the final planet that's going to change its directional speed is Saturn. So Saturn, like Jupiter, has been retrograde for months and months, and that is a planet of our concept of time. Over anything else, I think of time as being Saturn's umbrella because it's what time does to us. Time puts pressure on us. It makes us feel pressure. Like, I got to get this done. I only have so much time. It puts long-term pressure on us. Like, I'm going to die for sure one day, so I need to do all these things before I die. Or, there's only so long before this happens to me, so I need to make sure I have a roof over my head, this much money, this much food stored away, blah, 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 blah. It's a fear-based concept of time. It at least in its initial experience, it tends to be very fearful. It's also very humbling. Saturn is the planet that brings us to our knees. It brings us through the dark, dark stuff and makes us face the cold, hard facts of life, the cold, hard realities that just is what it is. And it brings us to a lot of solitude, loneliness, old age, sickness, disease, and poverty. So these are all the kind of experiences that Saturn brings for us. Saturn's in his own sign of Capricorn, so there's a lot of intelligence there. It's like maybe appropriate fear might be one of those things. Hard work, willingness to do the hard work in order to see through your long-term goals, willingness to be maybe a little bit more miserly or penny pinching in order to see those long-term goals. Willing to live a little more simply, willing to live alone, willing to be alone in the midst of a pandemic, being asked to, stay in your house and home and actually being able and willing to do that. These are all the kind of things that Saturn and Capricorn can do. Now, retrograde, you might have been really questioning all of the commitments you've made. You might have been questioning what you're doing the hard work in service of. What have you humbled yourself in service of? Was it worth it? Is it something true? Is there real fear? Is it, all these different things are the kind of questions that come up when Saturn is retrograde. And the biggest one in terms of our own lives is what we're committed to. What are we committed to? What are we doing the hard work for? And in retrograde, we question it a lot, but just like with Jupiter, we question, but it's an internalization. We're really drilling it down into ourselves. So we're really making it clear for ourselves. It's not able to be manifested on the external world, like our commitments aren't coming out really clear in the external world because we aren't totally sure. But we're going through this process of reminding ourselves or proving to ourselves why we have what commitments we do. So then we have Saturn moving forward September, I think 28th, and Saturn's a very slow moving planet, right? Saturn stays in a sign for 2.5 years. So right now we're already feeling that stuckness. Like, what did I commit to? And because of the fiery start to this month that we're now kind of tailing to the end of, we again, might have made some really big choices, really big decisions. And now it's like, my feet don't want to move. I'm not sure what I believe anymore. And if those ideologies even take me to the same place that I felt I was going, and I don't know what I'm committed to or why. I feel less confidence in all those things and really more stuck, like more than anything, just stuck. Like I've already made choices. I'm already stuck. And now I'm seeing like all of these other things about it that may or may not work out for me in the end. So it's that quality that we're all experiencing right now in this moment. Now, as the planets begin to actually move forward, we're going to see much more manifestation, like clarity on the commitments, clarity on the beliefs. Mars, on the other hand, is moving into retrograde, so it's going to be its period of questioning. What are we being courageous about? What is our action representing? What is our anger about, right? That's huge right now. The amount of anger we've seen burst out when Mars first went into Aries was huge, even though Mars is in good dignity in Aries. And so that anger can be funneled into physical activity. The initial burst from Pisces to Aries, almost always a little angry. First of all, it's on a Gandanta point. It's on a break between two signs where there's not any. That Gandanta point doesn't have a star that actually bridges the two signs. So it's literally from Pisces to Aries, from watery, sort of etheric world of mystery and imagination into the like fiery realm of action and making things happen. And so a lot of times that first jolt can be very angry. And we saw that flare up across the world and maybe even within yourself. So now that Mars is going to be moving retrograde, we're going to start to really manifest a little bit less action, right? A little bit less courage, a little bit less of that fiery, whatever it is you decide to post on your social media to get back at someone or to, give your angry retort. That quality within us that just acts is going to be slowed and delayed. And we're going to start questioning and we're going to start wondering and we're going to start, really trying to figure out what courage looks like and how are we being courageous and what way are we being courageous and things like that. So once Mars moves into Pisces, which is going to happen October 3rd, so it's going to be from tomorrow, September 9th to October 3rd, it's going to be retrograde in his own sign of Aries. But then he's going to travel back into Pisces, back into that sort of mysterious, spiritual, otherworldly realm. And that is where we're going to really have to dive deep into our spirituality, into the part of us that is the warrior, Mars, going retrograde, so internalizing the information of the Pisces realm, the realm of mystery, the realm of spirituality, the realm of merging with oneness. Can we align our external actions in the world with our internal reality that we really want to create, with that superhuman part of us that wants to merge with everything, really, with the great ocean of life? Can we find that within ourselves in a courageous way, in a proactive way, in a way that is actually physically doing something and not just sort of spacing out or, maybe imagining what we could be doing, but actually doing it. So the retrograde period will be more of that internalized process, not necessarily manifestation. And then again, when he moves direct, we'll see more progress. And I will also include that in my future report that I do a little bit closer to, like in the US, we have an election November 3rd. The transits that'll take place in November, December, all of that'll be kind of like a part 2 of the end of this year video. So I'll save all that for then, because we have kind of enough going on right now. So at the moment, the nodes, right, the south node and the north node are the biggest shift we're really experiencing, more than any of the other shifts. And the reason is because this is a 1.5 long transit, so it's a big transit. Saturn and Jupiter are not in those right now. Saturn made its transit into Capricorn in January and will be 2.5 years there. Jupiter will have its next transit change in November, like I said, so that's, a future video. So this nodal axis shift is happening very soon, September 19th, and it is a really big change in how we're motivated in the world, and a really big change in how the whole world is motivated right now. So our emphasis has been in Gemini, right? We've had Rahu in Gemini, the north node, and these are not physical bodies. These are mathematically figured out points in time and space where eclipses happen. So the eclipses of the last 1.5 years have been whenever there's a full or new moon in Gemini or Sagittarius, or close enough to the nodal point, in Cancer, or we had one where it was in Scorpio recently, where the actual node was in Capricorn, but the luminary was in Scorpio. So these points are showing us where we have accelerated karma. In our natal chart, wherever the nodal axis is, it shows intense drive in this world. And wherever the north node is, wherever the south node, Ketu, is, shows a place that we're really avoiding. Somewhere in our life, something in our life that we're really trying to back off of and pretend almost doesn't exist. But of course, it's there. That axis is there, and it's there for a reason. There's karma we need to complete where the south node is. There's karma we're beginning where the north node is. So wherever we're completing karma, we're like, I've already done that. I finished it. I know all about that. But underneath the surface is this, the burbling reality that, no, we have not completed that yet. And there is something very big left to finish there. And so it's going to continue to burble under the surface until we do something about it. And oftentimes what will spark that is something like Mars coming in. As we saw in 2018 when Ketu, the south node, was in Capricorn, Mars moved in to Capricorn and set everything on fire. Literally, I was living on the big island of Hawaii at the time, and it was lava just literally started to come up from underneath the earth. Of course, Capricorn is an earth sign. So you can see how that change, that shift, that fieriness, and that implosion, I consider it more of an implosion than an explosion, because it's kind of like happening underneath the surface and exploding up. But that, you could see how that was going to be very much earth related. Well, Ketu's been in Sagittarius this past 1.5 years, and we've seen that imploding energy be about beliefs, about ideals. I mean, big time. Again, I live in the US, so I've seen it through the Black Lives Matter movement, through people's beliefs around the pandemic and the austerities being, brought upon people in their lives, or whatever it is. That these are the different ideological beliefs that have really surfaced. Those are the ideas, or those are the, that's the Rahu end of things. Like, this is the information we've just received. This person was shot by the police, or this is the new rule in the town you live in or the state you live in. The information comes from the Rahu end, where we get the information, and our deep-seated beliefs on the Sagittarius end explode out the surface, and and it comes out all over the place. most people don't look wherever Ketu is. The average person does not live a super spiritual existence, and they're not trying to do their work, right? They live based on their desire, on their whim. They feel something, they do it. They, a lot of times people are very responsible, or they're oriented towards safety and security, especially with especially with Saturn in Capricorn. So they might make choices that they don't want, that they believe are their good long-term choices. But most people are not doing deep inner work to see why they are the way they are, right? Even most people who are spiritual are not really doing that work, because it's a lot easier to, drink fresh green juice and do yoga asana and sort of preach to everyone else than it is to really sit in your deep, dark shadows and marinate on why you are the way you are, why you believe what you believe, what you came from, and all of that. And then even when we do that kind of work, especially in this kind of Sagittarius Gemini climate we've been in, you're getting a lot of information from the Gemini end that's telling you how to do that work, right? A list of books you're supposed to read to fix that white supremacy problem you have, a list of information that's going to make you understand why this is the right person to pick for the president or whatever. There's a lot of people telling you what is the right information, and your feed is going to be representative of, your friends, your beliefs, and all these different things, and that's going to be what information you end up taking in, the information that works for you, that already confirms what you're already biased to believe. So whatever that is. If you actually, with an objective mind, read 99.9% of what has been posted in the last year and a half on Facebook, you would die laughing at how almost none of it has any real foundation. It's all just a big opinion warfare. And so you're grabbing at what works for you. What's like, oh yeah, that fits what I believe. That fits my worldview. And deep down beneath, all these beliefs are burbling up, but it's like, keep pushing them down, right? Keep pushing them down. That thing tells me why I'm right. That thing tells me why I'm right. That thing tells me why I'm right. And those things are all wrong, right? So now we have Ketu, the South Node, like right on that Gandanta point. And, we're days away from the actual move into Scorpio. And the Gandanta point in Ketu is very, very, I want to say traumatic. It's right between Mula and Jaista in Scorpio. So Mula in Sagittarius, which we've talked about somewhat recently because we did have those eclipses and they were right hovering in there. Mula is the root, and it's literally where we have this sort of chaotic, destructive pulling up of the roots of whatever the issue is. And in this case, beliefs. It's Sagittarius. It's what you believe. Now, of course, wherever Sagittarius falls in your chart is going to be very fundamental to this. So you're going to need to, understand what part of your life is actually being ripped up. And right now, at this moment, there's this free report sending out on on Saturn for all 12 signs that I wrote back in January. So if you haven't already signed up for my newsletter, then you can sign up, get that free report, Saturn for all 12 signs, and it will give you, an understanding of what house Capricorn is for you and what Saturn rules for you. I will be doing a Jupiter for all 12 signs coming up very soon. So that Saturn report is coming down really soon because, like I said, I wrote it in January. The report that's newer, that's also coming out, so right now you get two, is Rahu in Taurus, Ketu in Scorpio. So this nodal axis shift that's changing by the end of this month, that report is newly sending out. So it's been for a few weeks now. So you can get both of those reports if you sign up right now, and that will tell you where those planets are, where the nodal axis is in your chart and where Capricorn is in your chart and what Saturn rules for you. Jupiter is going to be one back from Capricorn. I did have a Jupiter in Sagittarius for all 12 signs a long time ago when that happened. And if you've been on my list for a long time, then you can look through your email and go up and find that and find out what Jupiter in Sagittarius means for you. But again, I'll be updating that for the new transit on Jupiter coming up soon. So I just wanted to put that side note in there in case you don't already get my newsletter. Then you will get these great reports, which are normally just twice a month, once for the new moon, once for the full moon, but occasionally I do special reports, and occasionally I also do written free reports that really break it down for each sign, because it's so fundamental and important to understand where this is happening for you. So the Rahu Ketu one will also tell you what Sagittarius is for you, and therefore you'll understand where Jupiter is in your chart as well, just by virtue of the fact that the South Node is switching from that place into Scorpio. So the Mula place, where we're ripping out the roots of our beliefs, of whatever area of our life we are, is traumatic for obvious reasons. Ripping out the fundamental growing stems of something is actually very traumatic. Most of the time we just kind of prune the top, right? We just cut off or harvest whatever we want and sort of leave the roots in the ground. So to actually dig in there, you have to make a gaping hole, a big open wound that's going to not be filled for some time, that's going to need some, tender care, some tumbling of the soil and all this stuff before you can even replant. The goddess who rules it is called Nariti, and she is an emanation of Kali, who is very destructive, very chaotic, not really associated to the more loving qualities of Kali, much more of just the destructive, chaotic part. And it's maybe the final flesh of that on our belief systems that have been holding us back for so long. And while we are stuck in this stagnated Jupiter that's not yet moving forward, and at the same moment Ketu is right in this Gandanta point, this is perhaps a moment in time where we don't feel like anything's happening, but actually it is. It is happening beneath the surface. It is happening. It is changing in a way where it will never be the same again, on our own personal cellular level, on our social circle level, on our grander social level, and in the whole world, So this is a moment in time where things are changing big time, and you could feel it when the fire was on at the beginning of the Leo new moon, but right now it feels like nothing's happening. But it is still all happening. There's a part of us that has to sort of trust and have faith, especially on these Gandanta points, because it is a leap of faith to jump from a water sign to a fire sign, which is normally how the Gandanta points operate, right? They normally do what Mars did, which was go from Pisces to Aries. When a planet is retrograde, as Mars will be, going from Aries to Pisces, then it goes backwards, and the nodes always move backwards. So that in itself is something very potent to understand, that the nodes move the opposite of all the planets unless they're retrograde. And the nodes are really our karma. Like, that's the karmic focus we have in this life and in those cycles, in those 1.5-year cycles. So that moving backwards means that while we experience life in this sort of forward trajectory through the signs from Aries to Taurus to Gemini to Cancer to Leo, we experience our karma the reverse of that. And that's not just sign-based, right? That's also house-based. So instead of going from your, beliefs in Sagittarius, let's call it for the Aries, the natural first house is Aries. So that makes Sagittarius the natural 9th house of beliefs, ideals, high teachings, teachers, laws, stuff like that. And the Scorpio is the natural 8th house of sudden unexpected events and facing our death and transformation and all of this kind of thing. So normally we're going from Scorpio, the watery realm, where we're really facing our fears with others. We're facing our fears with other people, like our fear that we could die and that they could die, or that we can't control them, that they could leave us, maybe even worse, I don't know. That we don't have control, and that all of our fears are both irrational and rational. We very much could just die at any given moment, but we also will likely survive many of the things in front of us. It's this deep shadow work we have to do where we face our deepest fears. And from there, we go and have these really strong beliefs in Sagittarius, because it's like, oh, okay, well, I faced all these fears. Now I understand, now I have a deeper wisdom, and I want to seek teachers and teachings that help me establish that wisdom even more. When we're going backwards, it's like, well, I have all these beliefs, I have all these ideals, I have all these things I already know, and all these teachings I've already taken, and I'm a teacher, and and all this stuff. And now I'm moving backwards, back into the realm of fear and transformation and change and that which I cannot control. And that's an interesting thing to experience, right? That's how karma works. We don't get to build on it. We have to unbuild it. We have to unwind it. We have to unravel. And Mula really helps you do that. Just rip those beliefs right out and start with all those shadows again. Start with where the beliefs came from. They came from transformative experiences. They came from facing your fears. They came from shadow work. But really what it came from was not doing the shadow work, not facing the fears, not actually allowing yourself to turn on the lights in the dark and see what's really lurking in the corners. Most of the time we sort of ignore, avoid, pretend whatever's lurking in the corner is not there. We don't really deal with it. And if we do it in this really, turn on the lights and we have a baseball bat for, a cockroach or something. It's like we have this really wild, high level of attack for something that's a very low level problem. So this is what we're jumping into, right? And the very first star that we'll hit is the last star of Scorpio. So it's the star called Jaistha. And Jaistha is the eldest. She is, of the 27 nakshatras, they're all considered to be the wives of the moon. And the moon's favorite is Rohini, across from Jaistha in Taurus. So the moon favors, and the father of the 27 nakshatras also favors the youngest, the rosiest, the most sweet-tempered and beautiful. And Jaistha often feels jealousy about that. There's a quality of being the eldest that, especially when you put it in a female context, that begins to get scorned, right? Because instead of respecting and honoring our elder women in our society and the knowledge and wisdom that they bring to us, and all their many, many talents, we have a tendency in this society to honor and venerate maiden. We tend to uphold the maidens and sort of reject the older women. And the older woman, if we are going the forward way through this, would be that person who was kind of holding on to their status and holding on to their queenliness and helping all the younger ones and maintaining order and allowing everything to funnel down in a very, clear way. There's a militant quality to Jaistha. There's literally a quality of the military, or of militants, and that holds the order. And then that eldest gets into Mula, into Narite, and it's like, F it all. Like, I can be a crazy, batty, widowed lady walking around the street without combed hair. So there's a losing of everything that can occur from Scorpio to Sagittarius, where it just doesn't matter anymore, where it's like a quality of really letting go of status, letting go of image, letting go of all the rules and all the things you have to uphold and all of this kind of stuff. It's calamitous, this Gandanta point. And the backwards, again, because we're not going forward, we're not going from Jaistha to Mula, we're going from Mula to Jaistha, is to bring back this quality of order, right? Things are chaotic. They already are all over the place. They already are kind of like, Nariti's dancing on everybody right now and dancing on our beliefs and dancing on the graves of our beliefs. And now, with all these wide open gaping holes where things have been ripped out, we're trying to go back into the land of the elder, of the militants, of the order, of the courage, really, because Jaistha is ruled by Indra, and Indra is the king of the gods, and he is written about in a more stately fashion in the Vedic texts. You can see that he was, the upholder of the way things should be, of the devas and their code of ethics and honor, and morality. He has the thunderbolt as his weapon, and he has a a quality of controlling, like the weather, controlling rain and controlling clouds and things like this. But later on in the Puranic texts, he has a bit more of a buffoon quality. He's that leader that is so egoic that he gets himself in trouble, or he challenges the true Godhead, and Krishna, and ends up creating, even more problems and having to always apologize. He's always having to apologize and make amends, and that quality is there also. So both are true. That sort of high level of upstanding, the honor and morality and all of that, and then that kind of buffoonery that can get us in trouble with our ego, and where we hold our power too strong, where we want it to be in power and we have a really hard time letting go of that power, or a really hard time, because when you are in power, when you are the eldest, you have to hold that. Your youngest sister there, who's looking all sweet and pretty, can easily come in and take your role and take your position. So you need to hold it and make it important and keep it important. And that's, in the context of the United States of America, where we're going into an election, that's a little bit of a red flag for astrologers and for everyone. We can already see through the different news. At this point, I wonder what to call news anymore, but we can already see how it's sort of being laid out, this idea of how things aren't going to go well during our election. And again, I'm going to do another video where we get more into November. In October, I'll do a video that kind of pushes us the rest of through October into November, December, because I think both of these are such big transitory times. I don't want to just overload this one situation. But just as we see that little leap, that little jump from the South Node from Sagittarius into Scorpio, that is a shift we're going to see taken. This sort of chaotic, wild, gaping hole reality into one where we seek order, and we seek the eldest, and we seek some kind of something to control all that madness and bring it back under an umbrella of the rules. Now, I say seek, but actually it's Ketu, right? It's the South Node. So it's actually almost where we don't seek. It's the lower half of the node. And in the mythology, the nodes were once one being. And then they're sliced in half by Vishnu's discus. And the North Node is just the head, just the face, just the mouth, eating everything in sight. And the South Node is just a body already digested, already have had life experiences, and no head. So no head means no presence in the world. It means not actively engaging in the world. So that node is not actively engaging in the world in the land of beliefs right now, and it will be doing that in the land of shadow work, really, in our emotional shadows and our emotional depths in Scorpio, which is a very powerful place for Ketu to be. But if we just speak about the Gandanta point and the immediacy of what's going to be happening and the nakshatras involved, it's that Jaistha nakshatra that it's moving into. So it's the part that we're not admitting, right? It's the part we're not actually engaging in, but it's there, and it's right underneath the surface. The part we will be engaging in, the big head that's eating everything inside, is going to move from information land, the land of many pieces of information, none of which have to actually formulate an opinion, all of which can just continue to be objective pieces of information in the Gemini side, where, really it's kind of, to me, the cosmic joke on all of us is that Rahu and Gemini you'd think would be very funny, but actually it's not at all. It hasn't been even remotely comical, and that's because I think the South Node being in Sagittarius makes it very unfunny, because it's like all the flexibility and objectivity that really allows Gemini to be a place of funniness, a place of humor, is because Gemini doesn't care. There isn't really a thesis. There isn't really a point. It's just taking in information and understanding it and objectively evaluating it. That's really what Gemini is at its best. But Rahu is not opening its mouth and having objective experiences. Rahu is where we're very delusional. Wherever Rahu is, you have a lot of confusion, a lot of delusion. It's the new place. It's the place you don't know what you're doing. And it's the place where you're wrong a lot. A lot of astrologers will say Rahu's where people lie. I have experienced that. Especially sometimes if you see that like Rahu on someone's rising sign, you can really see they have some issues with truth. But I look at it from a different perspective. It's not knowingly telling untruths. It's literally a delusional view of the world. Like it's seeing things in a very delusional way. So you can see all this information coming in. The objectivity is not there actually. This kind of crazy, deluded way that we see it. Like, well, that's not really like that, or this is, everything, if you read any given like comment sheath on any article, it really doesn't matter. You will see at least half the comments will be people saying, well, that's not a real source. You can see it on anything, any source. That's not a real source. I believe these sources. Well, just from the get-go, you just look at that. If people already have preconceived notions of what sources they believe as opposed to what sources they don't believe, there's no point in you don't even have to post headlines anymore. You can just post what sources you're reading. And then people can take their confirmation bias from whatever they choose to believe. But nobody's really looking at that, right? People aren't like, oh, I believe, looking really deep at their beliefs and why they have those beliefs. No, everyone's looking at it from the information end. Well, that's what we're seeing shift up in the northern part, is this kind of confused delusion view on information moving into, and I should say really quick that actually if there's like Raja Yogas or something like that, if you see with Rahu on the rising sign, like a lot of, and I just used the rising sign because when we're talking about these nodal axes, it's kind of like that's where the emphasis is. So when that's kind of a profound experience when you meet somebody who has Rahu on their rising sign, it's very there's like an almost obvious experience you have with them right off the bat, where there's this kind of mistrustful, confusing way that you're engaging with them. And when there are like a lot of Raja Yogas or things like that, wherever Rahu is in your chart, it can produce a lot of brilliance. So they could see through things. And that's the part of the node that's confusing, is sometimes you're seeing things that are very profound. You're like seeing beyond space and time into the reality of something. But it's always from the mystical. It's always from the metaphysical. It's not the real world. You're not seeing things as they clearly are in front of us. You're seeing them from this sort of deeper understanding. But a lot of times people are delusional. So it really requires very high dignity of the node, but also very high dignity or very strong Raja Yoga or something with any joining planets. Otherwise, it's more like delusion than it is like, amazing insight into reality. But it does have both qualities. And that's part of what deludes people, is they think they're seeing like the amazing light, but actually, a lot of it is not. So we move that back just the same. It's our karma moving backwards. So we're moving from Gemini, from the land of will, from the land of where we learn something new, the land of this sort of flexibility and objectivity and information and humor, into the world of Taurus, where everything is grounded. Everything is in the earth. It's physical, it's tangible, it's sensual, and it gives us pleasure. In Taurus, we don't just want a house, we want our house to be nice. We don't just want food, we want our food to taste good, and we want to grow our own food, and we want to like cook it and enjoy the process of cooking it, and we want to share it with our friends, and we want to eat it in moderation, and allow the whole experience to be really like lovely and organic from start to finish, and have a process to it. We want to be slower, we want things to move slower and be longer, take for the long haul. We have a stubborn quality, a fixed quality in Taurus. Actually, both Scorpio and Taurus have a fixed quality. So we see ourselves moving into a state of the sort of duality of Sagittarius and Gemini into the fixed land of Taurus and Scorpio. And that is us seeking stability, right? That north node is going to be like, please ground me somewhere. And this is one of the main reasons people are moving in mass. Just everywhere I see people moving, it's crazy. And if you actually like call a moving company, they'll tell you they've never had so much business, as this past month. Like, people are fleeing in droves, and it's because of the fact that we suddenly feel within us a need to ground. And even though we're not 100% sure, even though Jupiter and Saturn have still been retrograde, we'll probably see it even more at the end of the month as those twos move forward. For people who, are naturally very slow to make choices, people who naturally really don't move quickly or easily, like maybe a Taurus, you might see that those choices will occur at the end because they'll really need that Jupiter and Saturn to move forward. But for many people, that Leo new moon was enough. And even for a Taurus, because Leo is their fourth house of home. But you can see that the desire to ground is going to bring you closer to somewhere you feel that. So if you are somebody who's been living in a city and, going to your stores and your restaurants and living your life this kind of way, well, the last 6 months has been very different, right? You probably haven't been able to go to your gym or your coffee shop or all the different places you normally go. Maybe you just started being able to go to those places, but it's weird and you're wearing a mask and everything feels different. Whatever you loved about living in a city is kind of like not there as much anymore. And you might want to move closer to your family, or you might want to move maybe outside of the city. If you have children or you have kids, you might want to move somewhere more, chances are most people are going to be moving from a more city environment to a more natural environment, because Taurus is an earth sign, and it is sort of like the earth sign in the sense that it's the earth sign where we want to enjoy the earth. Capricorn's very practical, got to get things done, got to build that log cabin, got to have a roof over our head. Virgo is like organizing until it's, until everything is in its place. But Taurus is where we really want to enjoy the earth. Like, we want to grow food in the earth. We want to grow flowers. We want to make beautiful art. We want to make beautiful, we want to have family values. We want to have community. We want to have things that make our lives better. So chances are high that people are moving more to places like that, more to places where they can have a garden, especially considering the last 6 months have brought about so much uncertainty around food supply, around, what our lives look like. The more we can become self-sustaining in our own lives, in our own families, but also in our own little communities, the better. The more we're going to get off the internet barking at each other and all these ideas, and the more we're going to look at our neighbors and want to bond with them, regardless of their political affiliation. If you're in a small town or, and you get hit by a storm, you might need to help your neighbor, or your neighbor might need to help you. And you're not really going to be like, hey, who are you voting for in the election? You're going to be like, hey, can you pull me out of the water, please, and let me stay at your house for a few days. So there's a big difference between focusing on what people think and believe and focusing on what people feel in Scorpio and what people do in Taurus. And there's a very harmonious sharing quality there. There's a quality where people have and share, and they want everyone else to have too, because it's ruled by Venus. So harmony, getting along, even beauty, romance, fun, all of those things come into play. As we see with the Gemini Sagittarius realm, Gemini is supposed to be where things are funny, and when it's the axis, we kind of lose some of the funny, because underneath the surface there's this biting quality of beliefs that are actually stabbing the words out of us. Well, it's going to be the same thing with Taurus. It wanted to be fun and pretty and beautiful, and I just want to garden and have a good time, but underneath the surface is Ketu popping up all your shadow work, all the dark things you don't want to deal with, all your fears, and all the things that feel like rational or irrational, you're not really sure, but you have to kind of shine the light on them and do the work. This is considered to be an exalted axis, so we see that Rahu is more grounded. Rahu is a very airy quality. There's a strong level of dispersion of air, which no surprise, or even in the history of these kind of sort of pandemic, viral flu type pandemic things, we've seen that axis before. The fire underneath the surface, spurting the air out into the world. My colleague Malini, Dr. Malini Ayer, did a great video on that with my teacher Sam Jeppy, where she kind of goes back in time and shows all the different pandemics or epidemics that we've had, and how that fire-air axis is very common. So we have that, right? Well, Rahu is airy. It's already airy. So to be in Gemini, which is the most airy sign of all the air signs have an airy quality, but Gemini really has a high level of that because it's ruled by Mercury as well. So it's in the airy realm of ideas, and it is the air sign of that. The quality of the North Node being in the earthy, grounded sign of Taurus means that we'll be able to not be as erratic with that energy. The problem with Rahu in an air sign is it becomes even more erratic. It's all riled up on itself. It's like a person, if you've ever met somebody who's very Vata, who has that very airy quality, if they don't eat, right? If they haven't had breakfast, and most of those kind of people suffer from a problem where they don't eat at regular intervals. They often don't eat until later in the day, and by the time you meet them, it's like, oh, they've had coffee and they're all like zooted all over the place, but they can't calm down because they haven't had anything to ground them, to earth them. Well, Taurus is like food. It's where we're really literally grounding ourselves and bringing ourselves down to our denser quality. And literally one of the things we're going to see is that big open mouth in the land of food, eating, right? So maybe to ground yourself or comfort yourself, you might find that you start to take in a lot of food. This could be particularly true if you're a Gemini rising, because it's literally in your 12th house of escape. But for anyone who has a tendency towards that, or has, maybe planets in Taurus or something like that, that's something to be aware of, that you're going to need to moderate your food. You don't want to become somebody who's just grounding yourself through food. And one of the ways to really do that is to take on all the aspects of food. So if you live in a city, again, you're just going to the store and getting your food. But if you can grow your food, and you can cook your food, and you can make your food, and you can share your food, then all those things help to ground you as well as eating. And you can make sure that what you're eating is really clean, good fruits and vegetables, organic, and all of that. But even if you do live in a city, or, even if you live in a city, you can garden on your porch, but you can also make it a ritual going to the store, choosing your stores, maybe finding a co-op near you, ordering dry goods online and soaking them, and preparing food in a more intentional manner. All of this can help ease that part of you that might get a little too voracious in the food, in the eating department. So that's, one of the things to look at. From a political perspective, or more of like a social perspective, I don't really like to get too political, we can see that it's a time of moving away from ideas and beliefs into a time of safety, security, and again, like I said, really loving thy neighbor, honoring thy neighbor. So perhaps what's propelled people to move to their various places that they're moving has not just been getting close to family, although that's one of the biggest things I've seen, is people moving close to family, close to people that they think they will, should we get locked down again, should, whatever, all this craziness continue, where they want to be close to, who they want to have near them so they can give food and all that. Some people might be moving based on more ideological concerns due to this whole axis we've just been in. So there's going to be a process of stabilizing in that environment. And the different ideological camps, if you will, that people fall into here, in the US at least, but really I've seen it kind of globally, similar. Maybe there's more groups on a global level. Here we seem to be really stuck into separating everything into two places, right? We have a real, I don't know, there's some quality in our society here in the US that's unable to divide things in a more organic, natural, and realistic way. We have a tendency to really want there to be these two camps, and I don't think it's the people that really want that. I think it's from the top down. I think that's really how they've directed things, because it keeps control in the same hands. But I think that's a very unhealthy quality we have, of just everything is either this way or that way. And I think when we live amongst our neighbors and our friends and people who don't agree with us, we have to constantly find the nuance, right? We have to find the nuance of the places where we do meet, and then those places where we don't meet, we maybe don't talk about as much, or we don't we just avoid, because that's really what will be occurring in this axis, is avoiding the shadow work, avoiding the like uncomfortable conversations with people that might end up breaking up your friendship or your relationship, and focusing more on where you can join together, where you can break bread, where you can make things happen. So I think when people move for ideological reasons to these different places, they might find that they are suddenly like a stranger in a strange land, because rather than having their best friend or their mother or somebody very close to them around them who may or may not agree with their viewpoints, they're going to have people who might have some ideological stance that is very similar to theirs. But again, there's so much nuance in all of that we're not advertising, or that's not really happening on the social media front, that you might not really agree with that person at all, actually, right? There might be like almost no values you have in common, just like the one big one that's ruling the day. What's your stance on the pandemic, or what's your stance on the election? These kind of things could be the one big thing that moved you, but then now you're sort of stuck around people that you don't really have the same values as, and you don't eat the same food as, and you don't break the same bread. And that, I think, is going to be where the real shadow work comes up for people in that sense, like having to face the difference between thinking the same as someone or having the same ideological belief. And also, where did that come from, right? You might agree with someone right now because they might have this view, and like, for example, we've seen a lot explode recently about new age people being combined with right-wing Trumpers. This is like the new headline that I see blasted every day. I personally take a lot of disagreements with that perspective, but I'm not really interested in getting into that right now. I think that that's a really good example. If somebody has one viewpoint the same, like, I don't want to live somewhere where I'm forced to wear a mask, for example. So then they both move to this place, or one person already lived there, the other one moves there, so that they can both enjoy freedom of life without a mask. But then they find out that there's really like nothing else they have same value. Like, this person's eating organic every day. This person could care less if there's pesticides in their food. This person carries a gun every day. This person has never shot a gun in their life. This, they raise their kids different. Everything about it is actually really quite different. And there's not a lot of camaraderie or agreements on any other subjects other than that one that propelled their connection or reason for even being in the same place at all. So that's an example, a very real life one, like one that I've seen actually happen recently. So I bring it up because I can, but there's a million different ways that could play out. So I think the focus in this time is actually going to be more on who you feel comfortable with, and who are your friends, and who do you get along with, and who do you want to break bread with, than on who you agree with and who you have the same beliefs as. And that's really because we are moving out of that axis. So I hope that is helpful to you. There is a lot more coming in this year. It's a intense rest of the year, and I know a lot of people don't want to hear that because it's already been a really intense first part of the year. But what I would say is that while the future alignments for this year are intense, and even this experience we're having right now, there's a lot of like stuck energy and fear in this moment, and anxiety that can occur. And even moving into the Virgo new moon, we're going to see even more of that, because it's, Virgo is sort of an intrinsically anxious placement. But I think we are also moving towards more security, more grounding, more stability, more friendliness. Yes, right? Friendliness. Do we remember what that is? Friendliness. More, hopefully, depths of our own personal work. The potential is really there for some positive change in our world and in our personal lives. We are going to be moving much more towards our values and towards what we value and our own personal value. And that is definitely going to be a positive in the world. It's going to be a positive in our own landscape. And I think just the grounded aspect will be so strong for us that no matter what is happening on sort of the social, political stage at large, while there will be lots of people sort of, driven into that and still fighting those battles, the majority of us who might not be actually super political or really that interested in all this information, who've just been sort of transfixed by Rahu's energy for the last year and a half, will be focusing more on what's in front of us and what's actually there. So less time on the computer. And I know that sounds strange when we've just started distance learning for so many people. Children are now on computers for 6 to 8 hours a day, whereas we used to talk about how screen time wasn't good for kids. So what that means, though, is that people are at home more. And I've seen already many people pull their kids out of that school that's on the screen and just start traditional homeschooling. More and more, if this is extended and it's a long-term thing of distance learning, I think we'll see that a lot during this period. I think we'll see a lot more families decide to root down at home. What the pandemic did teach us was that we could work from home, or that we could not go across town for every meeting or whatever, that we could actually root more at home. And I think a lot of people are discovering that maybe where they live isn't feel like home enough. And so that's, they're going to find that place that does feel like home, and they're going to root down there, and they're going to try to reach out to their community as much as possible, and even to the elders in our community who we can learn so much from. So if we can bring back the elders, the focus in Taurus might be a little bit on youthfulness and family values and joy and beauty and all of that, but we can't forget wherever the South Node is, and that South Node being in Jaistha is so important for us to really remember that there are people who've been around for many generations and seen these same transits occur in their lifetime and have a lot of wisdom to impart on us. And not just a meme that somebody posts, or some post someone says, I talked to my grandfather and he said this, but like talking to our own grandparents or the elders in our own community, and really sitting with the fact that, young and new and intelligent is not always wise. And even finding out where our beliefs come from, finding out where our shadows come from, finding out what our family lineage has brought us to, and why we even have the shadow work that we have to do, or why we even have the beliefs we have to unravel or rip out the roots of in Mula. One thing I didn't mention was that the immediate nodal switch on the north end in Rahu is Mrigasira. So on the south end, it's a Gandanta point because it's water and fire. Wherever water and fire meet, we have a break, and there's no star that bridges that gap. But on the north end, we have Mrigasira, which bridges Taurus and Gemini. And again, normally you're going from that, initial stage in Taurus where it's a practical reality. It's something that's happening in the actual world, and then the young maiden jumps off, puts on her deer suit and goes off into the world to try to find knowledge and wisdom. This is the opposite. This is the reverse. We're taking all the knowledge, wisdom, information, not even wisdom, it's really more knowledge that we're taking in Gemini, and we're moving backwards into the land of grounded earthing. And where did everything come from? Where did all these ideas come from? And how can we go back to earth? And how can we come back to what grounds us and find truth there? So instead of seeking it in information or knowledge, we're actually going to be seeking truth, because Mrigashira is the truth, the seeking of truth. We're going to be seeking that truth through the land, through the ground, through art, through community and family, through values, and through things that are tangible, functional, make our lives better, and make our lives more beautiful and more connected to one another. So I hope this is helpful for you and that you got something out of this. I will be updating us with the second half of the rest of 2020 soon, and I will of course be doing our new moon report on the 17th. So I hope that you are navigating all these challenges really well. If you do feel like you need a little bit more insight into your specific chart, please reach out, contact me, and we can set up a Zoom reading for you. I also do recorded readings. And if you're not already on the email list, please do yourself a favor, sign up for that. And these free reports come out every time there's a major change. So every time one of the outer planets or the nodal axis shift, I always do these free reports. And right now you get 2. You still get Saturn in Capricorn for all 12 signs, which is, I wrote it in January, but it's a 2.5-year cycle, so it's really very much still present. And then you'll get this Rahu in Taurus, Ketu in Scorpio for all 12 signs as well. And then when I do the Jupiter one, that will come right to your inbox. So I wish you many blessings. Subscribe to the YouTube channel if you're not already, and I look forward to seeing you really soon. Namaste.